Hello, my name is Becky Gertis, and I'm the Community Outreach Specialist at the Thompson Center for Autism and Neurodevelopmental Disorders. Besides the role I play as a professional working with families and other professionals in the community, I am also a parent of an individual on the autism spectrum. It is because of these two diverse roles I play that I truly understand the necessity and significance of great partnerships. The purpose of this training is to provide information about how to effectively build and maintain professional partnerships. This training is intended for individuals with autism as well as families and professionals supporting individuals with autism in order to address the large need for successful family and professional partnerships. We know that having a successful support system and team can have a large impact on the life of an individual with autism. Therefore, establishing and maintaining these relationships is crucial. Throughout the course of this training, you will hear from a variety of perspectives. We have several parents who will share their experiences in building professional partnerships to address the need of their children and family. We will also hear from several professionals as they share recommendations on how to effectively team with families to best serve the individual that they are working with. When thinking about the term partnership, the definition will vary depending on who you are, the experiences you have had, and the current role you have within the partnership. It is important to consider what partnership means to us as we establish these relationships either as family members or as a professional supporting families. The term partnership implies that there is mutual cooperation and responsibility, as at least two people are working together with a specific goal. It is essential for those within the partnership to know their roles within the partnership and work together to identify common goals. Without roles or mutual goals, partnerships can be difficult and a lot less effective. Having effective family and professional partnerships provides a focus on the child or individual with autism that is involved. By involving and empowering families, professionals have the opportunity to make lasting change for that family. It is essential that professionals recognize that each family and individual is unique, and we need to be aware of the strengths and barriers that family has in order to best support them.
My name is Tracy Stroud. I'm a developmental behavioral pediatrician here at the Thompson Center in Columbia, Missouri. I work with families who have children with special needs, children with autism, or other genetic or neurologic conditions that can be associated with developmental needs. Partnership entails a number of different facets to me. It involves working very closely with the family and with the child. It involves working with other agencies and resources that the family would be involved with, such as school, regional centers, different services that would be available to the family through their insurance, and behavioral services.
My name is Scott Shade. My wife Tara and I have a 12-year-old son with autism. His name is Rye. We also have a 10-year-old son named Wyatt. My role as a parent is just really to be a dad. You know, we try to balance schoolwork with the fun things. Our role really as parents is just to guide them and to make sure that they have a safe environment to thrive and to do well. We have lots of partners. We arrived at the Thompson Center about 8 years ago. And we really realized then that it was not just us in this journey, that there are a lot of people who are here to help us. We can't do all of this on our own, so we rely on people to help guide us, to help us, to be honest with us, to tell us what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. We always say, we want to know what he's doing right because it's important, but you have to be honest and tell us where we need to improve, because he's only going to get better if we're focused on his deficits or the things that are challenging to him the most. And so if we can move that needle a little bit, we're creating a much better future and success for Rye.
My name is Leanna Vessel. I work for Columbia Public Schools as an effective practice process coordinator. What partnership means to me is that all parties, the school system, the parents, and many times the students, when they reach of age, feel that we are all on the same page. We've got good post-secondary goals in mind, that we're all working together and we feel confident with each other, that we are trusting, that we have the right goals, and that we are preparing our students for good lives.
My name is Amy Evans, and as a parent, I am the mother of Joshua Evans, who is 14, who is on the spectrum. I am also the director of ADA and Access at Moberly Area Community College. So as a family member, partnership means listening to what others have to say, It means gathering as much information from others as I can to help my son have the best life he can and the life that he wants. So as a professional, partnership means to me just listening to families and meeting them where they're at, supporting them to live the best life they want to live and the life that their child wants to live.
My name is Brittany Stevenson. I'm an occupational therapist at the MU Thompson Center. Occupational therapy is helping individuals achieve their everyday goals, so being able to brush their teeth or tie their shoes or do what's important to them. What partnership means to me is working with families in a collaborative relationship, so hearing their side and kind of having a collaborative discussion about their goals and my goals.
At times, there can be significant barriers that may prohibit effective partnerships. Professionals need to be able to anticipate and address these barriers as they arise to eliminate miscommunications, inadequate services, and struggles that might cause a negative impact. It is important to gain competencies in diverse cultural and racial norms, language barriers, limitations or changes in insurance coverage, or constraints from financial abilities. Know that agency intrusion and potential confidentiality breaches are real fears of families and individuals as well. Genuinely respecting each family's value and belief will help to reduce conflict and aid in better connections.
We've had great physicians and we've had great therapists and we've had great school support. But we have had, individuals along the way who are interested in their career and figuring out autism. The professionals and the people we've had the most success with are people who have really looked at Rye and his individual strengths and his deficits and figured out what personally works for him.
Some of the barriers that I see in establishing an effective parent-professional relationship would be situations where we really don't understand where the family is at in their day-to-day life, where it's hard for us to recognize how hard it is to get out the door in the morning with their child. But when we step back and look at it from that family's perspective, we just gain such a greater understanding of how we can actually help and partner with them in moving forward with the needs that that child and that family have.
I think the biggest barrier would be when parents come in with bad experiences. There's lack of trust in trying to foster that relationship and solidify that we are here for their child and that we're going to do what we say we're going to do. But I think in the end, no matter who the parent is and what they bring to the table, we want them to feel valued and trusted and a part of their child's education.
Early on when Joshua was first diagnosed, I needed a lot of information. I had been a professional and a special education teacher, but this was all new. This was my child, and so it was a different world. Now I've been in this system. I've been navigating it for quite a while as a family member and as an advocate for Joshua. So now what I really need is a lot more support with knowing how to help Joshua, how to help him learn how to be independent, how to help him learn to be social and appropriate, those kind of things.
I feel like it's important to meet families where they are because otherwise your recommendations or your treatment can be ineffective, because if you're recommending something or giving advice in an area that is not important to them or it's not realistic for what's going on in their family or their kind of level of priorities, then it's not beneficial for anyone.
I think it's important for people to meet us where we are in our journey. When we came here, we knew that something wasn't right with Rye, but we didn't know exactly what. And my wife is in the behavior development field. She knows this stuff. But when it's your own kid, you have a little different perspective, I think, as she learned. But having people not look too far ahead of where he is or look too far in the past wasn't really helping us. So we have a baseline of where we need to start, and that's right now, and that's right here.
There are a great number of characteristics and qualities that are involved in effective partnerships. Every person has a perspective on which qualities are the most important to them based on their backgrounds and experiences. Several key characteristics that have been associated with effective partnerships are clear communication, mutual respect, collaboration, trust, and empathy. These characteristics often serve as a foundation for family and professional partnerships. Additional qualities that are also important to these partnerships are the perceived level of expertise of the professional and their level of commitment. Many family members report that in these partnerships, they value feeling like an equal partner who has a role in shared decision-making for their child. It is essential that professionals empower families and individuals with autism to have an equal role in this professional partnership. Family members and individuals with autism can best describe their needs and concerns, and therefore this expertise needs to be utilized within these relationships.
I think the reason why it's so important to have effective partnerships is because of the outcome. And the outcome is that the person with a disability is able to lead the best life that they want, and able to make gains and meet their goals.
When working with families who have children with developmental needs, it's really exciting to see those relationships develop and how you bring that child and that family kind of into your own family, and then to work with a group of professionals to help that family move forward.
Ongoing relationships and partnerships are very important to us. Rye goes to speech and language therapy every semester, and he gets a new clinician every semester, and I think that those changes are good for him because then he learns that people and neighbors and friends and family come and go whether they move or we're not around them as much anymore. So it is a good thing for him to experience those different people coming in and out of his life. But usually those clinicians are supervised by the same person, and so I think that on some level, Rye digs into those therapy sessions for that person and knows that she's always going to be there. I think that he has that person there as an ongoing partner who's been in his life for a really long time that serves as sort of his safety net so that he performs better in those individual sessions because of her.
I think qualities that are important for an effective partnership would be open communication and flexibility. So being able to have open, honest conversation about what's going on and what's important, and being flexible enough to see someone else's point of view and to maybe meld your point of view a little bit to the other person's.
There are some things that I find really valuable in partnerships, just having a common goal. Knowing that everybody in that partnership cares about the individual and their future, mutual respect for everybody, that everybody has their points of view, but that we can work together to put the puzzle together. That's what I find important.
I think it's important for families to feel strong in their advocate voice. As a parent, you really need to be the captain of the team. You have to be able to be the liaison between the school and medical professionals, other therapies that are going on. If the school doesn't know some of the medical concerns that your child has, they might not understand some of the behaviors that they're seeing. To have that insight can create better understanding for them, will help them better support your child and what they need and not just addressing behaviors that they can't control.
There are definitely certain qualities that make it easier to form a partnership. Obviously, trust is huge, and I think anything we can do that humbles ourselves, that makes us a better listener, that makes us a better communicator, so that that parent feels like they understand my child, they understand what I want for them. Maybe we don't always agree on something, but I know they have their best interest at heart and they are the expert here. And that they're listening to me, then we have a great partnership and we have trust and we're all working together, and it creates the best outcomes for students in the end.
What we value in a partnership is someone who genuinely cares about Rye and invests the time, who has a vested interest in his success. The main one is that reciprocal caring. We want someone who really cares about our family, our situation, our goals, our objectives. My wife always says, ultimately our goal is for Rye to move out. We want him to have an apartment. We want him to have a job. We want him to be able to drive a car or take the bus. And so we value people who look at those things as attainable objectives.
Teams feel most committed to partnerships when they do feel a sense of satisfaction. They feel like the parents are doing their part in what they say. We don't like to be in turmoil with parents. In the end, when we both feel like we're on the same page, we feel good about the partnership. Anytime that we feel like somebody's against the other, that can create a lot of anxiety for both parties.
A lot of times I gauge satisfaction through participation. So if I feel like families are really participating and asking me questions and following through with what we're talking about, then I feel like I know that they're satisfied.
What makes me feel engaged and committed to a partnership is when I know that everybody involved is looking at my son's best interest, looking at trying to support my son as he navigates the system, as we navigate the system for him.
Shared decision making and collaboration to me, when I'm working with a family, often means that we're having dialogue back and forth on topics that would directly impact that child's services or medical needs. Families are often seeking our assistance in letters for advocacy or recommendations for different services, and we're happy to help provide some of those supports for the family and child.
A family that I really had a successful partnership with required a lot of time and effort outside of kind of normal working hours for a lot of the professionals involved. We had to do a lot of communicating, scheduling, and trying to figure out when we could all get together and be able to talk. And we were able to get together as a huge team with all of the professionals that were involved with this child and the family, and really hone in on what was important and what the family's priorities needed to be based on what the family wanted to do. And that was really difficult because it wasn't just a 5-minute conversation in the lobby. It took a lot of time and effort on everyone's end to really make it happen. That collaboration really helped impact that family because then they were able to see what professionals agreed on and what they thought their priorities should be, and they were able to really hone in on what was important and kind of pull away from the things that were taking a lot of time and energy out of their day but weren't necessarily doing a whole lot for the child.
One of the things that make me feel like people really care and are supporting my son is when they talk about his strengths and talk about the things that he does well, in addition to the things that we need to work on, and also that they talk about the strengths of our family in addition to the things that we need to work on, and that we're all on the same page with the same goal.
I think our objective is obviously his success in being a social person and to get through school and to do all the important things that we want for him. Ongoing relationships help us do that because he's comfortable with those people and he's going to give them more, and we all have techniques in getting into him and getting through to him and getting him to produce for us.
I have a number of families that we've had just excellent parent-professional partnerships over the years, and I can think of several children that I've known since they were 2 or 3, and just watching and applauding the progress that those kids have made with those families over the years. Many are now graduating out of my care, and it's just exciting to see what they're doing and have watched their families go through that process. I think some of the things that have made those partnerships really successful have been just a really open communication between the parent and myself, access to each other through either electronic means to communicate or over the phone, or open door for visits when needed. And we've been able to work through a lot of situations that might have otherwise ended up in more of a crisis situation by being able to be responsive to the needs that come up.
One example of a very successful outcome we have had would be with a student who really struggled in one particular school behaviorally, and the parents definitely felt like it was a product of how those staff members were dealing with the behaviors. The parents moved over the summer and were coming back to a different building within our district. So we spent a great deal of time listening to the parent, listening to the ideas, listening to some of the medical advice that she was bringing to the table. And in the end, with a few tweaks on our end, we came up with a plan that everyone felt good about, with the idea of increasing time at school. And over the course of a few months, the student was extremely successful. We had multiple phone calls to amend the IEP where the parents, you could just tell, felt completely trusting of that case manager, of the case manager's interactions with her child, and it just proved to be extremely successful, and very proud of that transition.
Family professional partnerships are not just between the family and one provider. Partnerships, especially for families with children with autism, involve multiple professionals, agencies, and community partners that need to work together to provide quality care. Parents need to feel empowered to facilitate the communication between these parties and advocate for their needs across providers. Professionals need to recognize their role within a greater team. Oftentimes, a plan needs to be in place to communicate the role within the greater team. The entire team should have an understanding of the services provided to the family and perceived impact of engagement within the team.
Joshua has a lot of people in his life. We have our family, and we have our church family and extended family. But then we also have medical professionals that work with him, and we have school professionals that work with him. And so it's important that we all know that each other exists, because we all have little pieces of the puzzle, and also that we know that everybody has different perspectives and we work together for Joshua's best interest. One of the things that recently happened with Josh, where we collaborated with lots of professionals, all the professionals and our family, was his last IEP meeting. Josh was getting ready to go to high school, and so we're having another transition. It was really successful because we all listened to the other's point of view, and sometimes, I would have ideas and the school would say, well, this might not work, but something else will. Or Boone County Family Resources case manager would say, have you thought about this? And the schools hadn't thought about that. So it was really helpful to have all those minds together.
Students with autism often have many, many providers as families are working with a host of different individuals on maximizing their child's goals. Sharing information is incredibly important. I feel that sometimes, especially when there is a lack of trust, that families are less inclined to maybe want to share certain things that are happening outside. And when that happens, we aren't able to work in construction with those families. We want to make sure we know what the family's goals are and what those goals are working with outside providers. And if we're able to work together, we're going to definitely get better outcomes than if we are working in contrast.
I empower families to make decisions and advocate for their child by providing information. So I try to connect them to different resources in the community, or even just different people who have access to resources that I don't or their family doesn't already have access to. That way they can kind of make informed decisions and talk to the people they need to in order to advocate for their child.
When working with families, as medical, we're part of a team. Part of a team of educators, of behavioral therapists, other health providers for that child, and working with that family and where they see us fit in that team is vital to that child's success. We find it very helpful to talk with other providers. Through the health system here at MU, families can log in and access their own health information to share with other providers. To be able to help partner with the school system and with the other professionals working with that child in other arenas has been very helpful when we're making collaborative decisions about that child's medical care.
Individuals with autism a lot of the times have multiple providers working with them even at the same time on the same day, which can be really confusing. So collaboration is really important at moments like that, because all of our roles are complementary but sometimes overlap in a lot of ways, and we get a lot of good information, and sometimes we get differing information or information that complements each other. So being able to work together and share that information effectively is really important. A lot of the times it gets left up to the family to communicate from one provider to another, which can be really burdensome for the family. So I in particular try to ask for permission and get through to be able to either email or call other providers so that I know what's going on in other contexts.
The type of partnership that I found most valuable is one of mutual respect, where the parent sees the advantage of working with the professional and sees, that the professional does have training in areas that maybe they don't have training, and also where the professional sees that the family member is kind of the expert and knows that child and lives with that child every day. So it's kind of that mutual respect.
A primary role within the team that at times is not addressed is the voice of the individual with autism. From a young age, individuals with autism should be encouraged to be an active participant on their team to the extent that they are able to. Families and professionals should consider ways to encourage individuals with autism to share their opinions, make choices, and communicate preferences. As a child ages, this role can evolve to be a primary team member who communicates their needs and wants effectively.
There is a time in the near future where Rye participates in his own IEP meetings. And I think that the way to approach that is just to give him time in that meeting, that's dedicated time for him to talk about it. Say, we want you to think about what you want to say in your meeting tomorrow. What do you want? What do you want to be? Express that. Are there things that you don't like? And you need to maybe even have them write those things down so that they feel prepared when they go into a meeting just like the rest of us.
And working with adolescents, a lot of the times the way I try to help empower them to make change in their own life is by asking questions. So a lot of times I ask them, do you know why you're here and what this is supposed to be helping with? Because sometimes at that stage of life, they're still following along with what parents are asking them to do and are not necessarily yet thinking about what they want for their own lives and how other people can be a resource to them.
Some of the ways that I would like for everybody on the team to start involving Joshua in this partnership is just to ask his opinion, to invite him to meetings, to not talk around him or talk about him, but talk to him. Encourage him to ask questions and to give his opinion because it's his life.
Professionals can empower Rye by just allowing him to be himself for a little bit. It's that whole, the first couple of minutes of a therapy session or an appointment or class, you have to give him that time to be comfortable in that setting, to get comfortable to you, to get comfortable to change, to transition from what he was just doing 5 minutes ago. And then once he feels comfortable, then you can really take off. I think that where the biggest challenges are with Rye is when he has to move from one thing to another too quickly. Those transitions, especially with kids on the spectrum, but with anybody, we all need time to decompress from this and to move on from that.
Regardless of the student's disability, we are always looking to incorporate that student into our IEP meetings as much as possible. For a student with autism, given the communication difficulties that they do have, it can even be more challenging. With autism spectrum disorder, there is a spectrum of abilities. So our very, very high functioning autism student can very much be a central role in being a part of those meetings, really thinking about what do you want, what are your post-secondary outcomes, thinking about those work experiences, thinking about how we can incorporate their goals into our transition plan so that we really are aligning and partnering with the student and the family in working towards their goal post-high school.
The need or level of support has changed, not necessarily increased or decreased, but has changed. We're going from, ABA to speech and language therapy. We're going from speech and language therapy to, transitioning into the workforce. It's just like having a kid, you start out in diapers and then you move to other needs. Parenting never gets easier or harder, it just changes. It's more fluid.
Sometimes we're talking through what the latest steps in that child's development were, and family doesn't really want advice from me. They just want me to be a champion or cheerleader on their team to just be excited about the successes of their child. And other times they're at a point where they're needing me just to listen and to be there to kind of walk through some of the next steps that they need to take as they move into some of those steps where they're seeing those successes again.
We all have the need to build strong relationships, and to do this, it is essential to invest the time and be committed to each connection with a personal responsibility for quality. When communicating, we must express clear expectations of our outcomes and the roles of each individual. Thoroughly planning and thinking in a proactive way can dramatically decrease some of the pitfalls that might be encountered otherwise. Being proactive can assist in anticipating these barriers that lie ahead, thus allowing time to avoid these issues altogether. Even with the best intentions, recognize that fit issues can happen and it's okay to look for a better fit. Ultimately, it is what's best for the individual that needs to be the primary focus. This is something that professionals need to constantly remind themselves.
I think it's important to have a goal of building and maintaining relationships with families from the moment you meet the family. It's helpful to get an idea of where that family's at with the goals that they have for that child, the interests that that child has, the values of the family, and to build a relationship that then helps with communication and mutual decision making.
When there's multiple partnerships and there's lots of people to communicate with, as a professional, I try to just keep everybody in the loop. I talk to everybody separately but give them all the same information. I make sure that everybody knows that their input and what they have to say is important. I think I also do that as a family member too, just talk to all the professionals and then relay what I've learned and put it together.
Our experience with the school, for the most part, has always been a positive one. I think teachers do what they do because they love what they do, and they're in it for all the right reasons. Our personal experience has been show up to the IEP meeting with brownies, go to every meeting with, coffee and donuts. We've just never felt like fighting the school was the right approach for us. We come from the approach of we're in this together, we're partners, we're friends in this, we'll help you, you help us. And you really form that bond and that partnership for better outcomes.
When a relationship is broken or trust has been lost, try your best to move forward with a clean slate. Reflect on the principles of partnership and strengthen your efforts in each of these areas. Remember that families run into their own roadblocks. If they perceive their voice or needs are not valued or heard, this ultimately creates conflict. All of the components of a partnership build on each other and oftentimes get stronger over time. It is important to be aware that if one component of the relationship is not addressed or becomes broken, all the other parts of this partnership may crumble. For example, in this graphic, you can see that at the center of the arch is the trust. If the trust were to be broken, then all the other pieces will fall off and need to be rebuilt. It is much harder to rebuild a relationship after it has been broken than it is to establish an initial relationship. Professionals need to keep in mind that at times families have had broken relationships with previous providers, which makes the development of trust and shared decision-making difficult. This is a barrier that professionals can work through by having clear communication with the family, establishing mutual goals, and gaining trust over time.
We've had a couple of instances where things weren't exactly working with a professional, and I think that all that means is that they didn't really understand right. So I think that you can take a couple of approaches there. You can bail ship and you can move on, or you can approach the person and go, it is at the end of the day, about our son. This particular session is, and that's what we need to focus on.
When I don't see eye to eye with another professional or we have conflicting opinions about treatment for a child, a lot of times I try to keep that open communication about what I think priorities are and what they think priorities are, and I usually try to encourage them and families to keep data on what they're doing so that way we know which interventions are making the most effect for the child.
It's important for parents to let professionals know the areas that they do struggle in and what is hard for them. Professionals don't know this information and they want to help. And if a family can be honest and open, then they're really setting themselves up for success for their family as a whole, for the individual that's being supported, for great outcomes.
I think sometimes where partnerships and collaborations can hit a rough spot is when there's some breakdown in that communication, whether that's something someone said that got misunderstood or something someone said that wasn't intended to be taken that way, and either the provider or the family feels that suddenly they're having differences in opinion and not understanding where the other person is coming from. And so sometimes it takes a lot of recommunicating and trying to come to an understanding of where that misunderstanding came from.
When working with families, at times there may be a strain in the relationship, or times where communication's not going well, or the outcome for the child isn't ideal. And I think what's been most helpful is just being available, expressing availability to the family for urgent appointments, for after-hours appointments, to talk on the phone, to talk with other professionals working with a child to get that broader view of what's going on, to help in some of the next steps.
When a partnership is broken, it's incredibly important to gain that trust. It's important to humble yourself, to listen, to acknowledge when we've made a mistake. Sometimes maybe we haven't felt like we've made a mistake, but it's still important to listen to the parent, because somewhere along the line, we've done something that have broken their trust. That can take a lot of conversation. That may mean meeting at their home. That may be just reaching out to someone that maybe isn't quite ready for that conversation. So as much as we can do to help build that is incredibly important.
I think sometimes when trust is broken, it's important for the provider to keep that open communication with the family and apologize and let them know that we know that they're going through a lot and that we're here to help, and whatever misstep that we've done on our part, that we want to be there to make it right.
When I was first starting out teaching, I had a family and a kid that I wasn't in agreement with what the family was doing or what they were wanting to do with their child. And I offered more of an opinion instead of meeting them where they were at and listening to what they really needed or wanted. And so what I had to do is, after I realized that that was wrong and that it was something that broke down the trust, I had to go back to them and just say, hey, I was wrong. I did not listen to what you had to say. Let's start over. Let's try again. Please tell me what it is that you want to say, and what you want for your son. And that's how I was able to mend that relationship.
There are times when you have to stand up for what's right for your kid. You have to give them examples and say, we need to come up with a solution for that. But I've always been the type of person who says, if you're going to criticize the way someone does something, you have to have a solution or you have to have an idea. You can't just say, I don't like the way this is being done. You have to say, I don't like the way this is being done because... And when you outline the reasons and come to the table with a few answers and solutions, we've always felt like you have much more understanding on the part of the school. They're much more willing to help you out.
There's been times where communication has been ineffective and we've had disagreements. And so one of the things that we've done is we've had a mediator come and be involved. It doesn't have to be anything negative. It's just somebody who can come in and look at both sides of things. There's been times where we have had other professionals that work with Joshua come in and meet with ourselves and the schools so that they can look at both sides and come up with a good consensus that's best for Joshua.
In a parent-professional partnership, I think it's very helpful to understand where families are at. There are times when we may make a medical recommendation for a child for what we feel is a very necessary therapy or treatment, and that doesn't happen over the next several months, and you see them back and you kind of feel like that relationship or that partnership isn't going well. I think it's very helpful then to kind of step back and look at what are some of the barriers, to look at other supports and services that may need to be put into place, to enlist other resources, community partners, and helping that family meet the objectives that they have for their child as well. But there were barriers that prevented that from moving forward.
I think you regain or mend a relationship just like any other. It's through communication. We've found that our best success rates are people, professionals, teachers, friends, family members, just educating them about what our needs are. And it's that open dialogue, and it's that discussion, and it's that communication. If we're not communicating, then we're not going to get the results. I have a saying, garbage in, garbage out. If we're not giving you enough information, then you're probably not delivering the goals or the expectations that we need. So when it comes to mending or repairing relationships, I think you have to look at yourself first. Am I doing everything that I can to provide this person with the information they need to do their job?
There are many things that professionals can do to increase strong partnerships and create trust. One important consideration is to understand where families are with their emotions and readiness to receive information, and to be able to meet them at that place. If a family or individual is still in a state of shock or disbelief, they will be unable to hear news or additional information. Keep in mind that every individual is equipped with different abilities to process grief or other stressors. Everyone moves through this process in his or her own way and his or her own time. Parents of children with disabilities have reported that they go through a grieving process or a cycle that may impact their perspective and emotions. It is important to note that parents of children with autism have reported that the cycle of grief may occur over time in different areas as their child ages. Oftentimes, families report guilt about what they feel that they should have done differently, whether it was age of diagnosis, services they sought out, or things they did at home. This guilt and grief can come in waves, as oftentimes individuals with autism have their own cycles of progress or possible regression. It is essential that professionals working with families and individuals with autism are aware of this possible grief cycle and provide flexible levels of support as the family needs it. It is also essential that professionals help families understand what factors are in their control and what may not be within their control.
So when Josh was first diagnosed, I think I knew he was on the spectrum, but just getting that diagnosis was definitely hard. I think because I was a professional and did have that knowledge, people thought, oh, she'll be okay. She knows, what's going on and what to expect. But I think that even as a professional, I needed to know what to expect, what was the next step, and I just needed that support that it was going to be okay. It was going to be different, but it was going to be okay.
Sometimes when a family is experiencing grief, they really struggle with finding the right words. But it's okay to tell a professional that they are lost and they don't know where to go next. That's where the professional steps in and really can help with creating those next steps and knowing the course to take.
It's important to meet families where they are, especially whether it's a new diagnosis or a diagnosis that they've had for a while, that they may be in a different stage, kind of in grief or thinking about what their child's future is going to be like. So depending on where they're at, I try not to overload them with certain information or try to take smaller steps at a time. If they're earlier in the process, try to ask more questions and make sure that they know what I'm saying and that they feel that they have the power to ask me questions too.
It's important that professionals recognize that grief keeps reemerging so that they know to meet families where they are at and to continue to provide support to families and to kids as they're going through. It's not just a diagnosis, it's living life with autism spectrum disorder.
Sometimes families are pulled in so many directions. They want the best for their child, and there are so many supports that are available. It's too hard to do it all. Sometimes focusing on one thing at a time is the best way to move forward. When taking on too much, sometimes that can be detrimental, can create more stress, can deplete your energy and confuse you and frazzle you with the directions that you're going. Focus on the resources and the supports that are really beneficial. Sometimes it's hard to know if you're involved with so much what really is helpful. Families don't always have the words to ask additional questions to receive clarity, so professionals need to make sure that they are describing the purpose and problem clearly and why specific recommendations are being made. Specific information will also eliminate misinterpretation and make sure that all parties are on the same page. Take time to really listen and to answer questions. By really listening, it establishes that you care and are interested in truly helping. It also allows you to comprehend the best way to help a family if you're really paying close attention.
I think families can offer a ton of information and collaboration for me. I can't make any decisions without information from the family on knowing what happens with their child on a daily basis, what their child likes to do, what things have worked in the past, and things that are currently working for them at home. Families have all that expertise about their child.
Families need to recognize that professionals only have the information that we provide them. As parents, we have all the insights to our children and what's important to them and what's important to us. So it's our responsibility to make sure they can best support us that way and provide the most benefit.
As a family and I dialogue more about the child's needs and what their day looks like, we can get more information that helps discern whether or not we need to be looking into additional resources, such as adaptive equipment or safety equipment that would be helpful for them.
The schools have a child for 8 hours a day. A parent has the child their whole life. There's so much information that a parent has, whether it be medical, whether it be just anecdotal that they see working with their child at home, that can be incredibly beneficial to us. It is a different setting. Not always does it apply, but the more we have and the more ideas that the parent brings to share, often the better we're able to tailor their educational experience to align with their goals.
It's important that families are open and share information across providers so that everybody's on the same page, because we all have our different perspectives and a little piece of the puzzle, and so everybody needs the information so we can put those pieces together.
Realize also that families need your help in coordinating supports. They are often not aware of the options that are available and can benefit from the connections that service providers have. Helping them to prioritize and establishing the next steps will aid in keeping all parties focused and creates precedence. This can be useful in eliminating confusion of what to do next.
I think that professionals could better understand our situation as a family if they understand that this is a really big circle of people. We have a lot of people in this formula. Our son Wyatt contributes, every one of Rye's teachers, his paraprofessionals, administrators, family members, friends, neighbors. And I think that professionals sometimes come in and because they've had the experience and they've lived this every day, they also have to understand that there are a lot more components to our story than just the data that's on the paper that's in front of them. It's a much bigger picture than just data on a page.
I think open communication and flexibility is usually established through making sure that families feel like they're being heard and that what's happening on a daily basis that I have an actual understanding of and not just an idea of, or that I'm assuming what's happening at home, but that I really understand where they're coming from and what daily life looks like.
Strategies that I find helpful when working with families where communication might be a little more difficult or challenging would include more frequent follow-up visits and interfacing with other organizations, community supports that are involved in that child's care.
As a parent, there's a lot of good that comes out of collaborating, whether it is with a professional, with another family member, with another parent, and building teams supports the whole.
The more we know our parents, the more we're able to propose goals that align with a parent's desires for post-secondary outcomes.
Keep a positive focus and celebrate successes. By building on the positive, it tends to keep things moving with forward momentum. Individuals always seem to be aware of the negative, but can have a hard time putting a lens on the good things that are happening. Recognize that each positive insight can be fuel for additional progress. Don't underestimate the value of this tool.
I think that professionals can help celebrate the successes of our family by asking questions, by acknowledging those strengths, and by showing interest in our family and what's going on. I think that when people accentuate Joshua's strengths, it helps him to feel better about himself, and he's more positive. It makes him try harder because he knows that people have faith in him and that he can do things.
Celebrating successes with families is exciting, really rewarding part of this job. I'm inspired by families daily. We have a question on one of our forums that says, "Tell me a great thing that your child did in the last week." And I think that just opens the door to be able to share those successes that child's had.
We have often used token economy systems with Rye, as motivators, to get him to do the things that he doesn't really like to do, like schoolwork. At the end of that, if he fills a board of Rye Cash, he gets a trip to Laser Lanes, or we take him to the party store to buy a new sword. Professionals, I think, can help us celebrate those successes in a similar way. If he hits those benchmarks, we need to have a party. We need to celebrate that in a way that is fun for Rye, not a way that's fun for us. It's just to acknowledge, our accomplishments and the hard work that we've put into it. So I think that there can always be some little token of appreciation, that a professional would give to a kid that's worked really hard.
I think it's really important to celebrate successes with families because sometimes we're really focused on all of the negative or all of the areas that the child has to grow in. So when I communicate with families after a session, I try to emphasize the things that went really well that day so that they understand that there were things that went well and there are reasons to celebrate what happened that day.
Let families know it's okay to not have all the answers today. This takes time. Encourage them to take care of themselves, communicate and share responsibilities between themselves, and learn from the past and focus on the future.